My name is Terri Cruz, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Terry.
Well, hello, Laughlin. Oh, my God. I love this place. It's so beautiful. If you live here, you're very lucky to get to live here. It's very cold in Ohio right now. And they just had a big snowstorm, like 2 or 3 inches of snow was dumped on them Friday night. So I'm like really happy to be here right now. And I wish I could stay. I want to be here. So a couple housekeeping things. There's a lot of people I want to thank. We'll start out with Pam. Is she in the room? I know she's worked really hard, and she had some stuff. There she is. Pam, I want to thank you for the contact that we've had the last several months and for the invitation to come out here. That was very kind of you. And to Mike for picking me up at the airport. Is Mike in here? Yeah, he didn't know if he'd be able to make it, so I don't see him. But Mike D., shout out to you. And my friend Julie for traveling with me. It's a long haul out here. And to bring a friend from home, a familiar face to hang out with and share this journey with. And, I fly a lot. And I usually take the aisle seat. I used to be into the window seat, and now it doesn't even matter anymore. And I take the aisle seat. And I think Julie mentioned she had flown maybe one time. And we were getting ready to go over the Rockies, the Colorado Rockies, and the pilot got on, and as usual, it's going to be a little bit choppy. I'm going to put on the fasten your seatbelt signs in about 5 minutes. If you need to use the restroom, now's a good time to get up. And she's got her face glued to the window, and I'm like, oh, yeah, it's just the Rockies. And she's like, yeah, it's the Rockies. And I'm like, I just saw it through her eyes, like that little shift in perception, like I want to see things as being half full, not half empty. And so thank you, Julie, for tagging along with me and just for sharing your experience. That was a lot of fun. And I am sure I'm forgetting somebody. I do this invariably. You know how you sit down afterwards, you're like, oh, my God, and I didn't mention so-and-so. Oh, there is something I want to mention. So I want to apologize to Doug R. I know I took you sly. I know I was supposed to be in Sunday morning. I hope you got your tissue. I'm a Sunday morning kind of girl. And so I couldn't speak on Sunday because it means getting home after midnight, departing after lunch. It's a long trip home. And so I put the call back that any slot but Sunday would be best when I speak on the West Coast, and I got this one, and I saw him in the Sunday, and I was like, oh no. So if you're around tomorrow, make sure you come back because he's got a really, really good story, and please forgive me, Doug. So anyway, so let's just get right down to it. So I have a sobriety date. It's October the 17th, 1993. I did not get sober by choice. I did it kicking and screaming. I had to be physically locked up and removed away from alcohol because I was that kind of chronic drinker. I could not put the plug in the jug, and God knew what I needed, and what I needed to do was to be physically removed away from it and placed in an environment where I couldn't have it for a long, long time, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And so I grew up in an alcoholic environment. Like, it was normal. It was real normal to see my mom drunk. It was normal to see her in blackout states, or maybe for her to take off on Friday and not resurface until Sunday. That's the kind of home that I grew up in. I didn't grow up in a Beaver Cleaver home where everybody loved like my husband, that's how he grew up. And his mom was a teacher, and he just naturally knows the right thing to do when it comes to parenting children. And I still, after 25 years, I have to scratch my head and think about it. Like, things don't just come natural for me. I've had to work very hard to get where I'm at. And so as a child growing up in little old Woodville, Ohio, it was just me and my sister Pam. My mother was a single parent, and she was a bartender. So she was leaving for work at the end of my school day. When I'm coming home from school, she's leaving for work. And then during the middle of the night while I'm sleeping, she was returning. So when I look back on my childhood, we don't have the family vacations and even dinner, even meals around the table together. It was me and my sister. She was 2.5 years older than me, and she basically raised me. My memories are fighting with her, her helping me get dressed for school, her looking out for me. My sister, to this day, we're still really close, and definitely attribute that to the way that we were raised. And all of my extended family, like aunts, uncles, cousins, were down in the hills of southern Ohio, down near the Ohio River. My parents migrated up near Michigan to a small community near Toledo when she was 16 and he was 21. So I didn't have any family. It was just me and my sister. And I don't remember, and I say this in my talk a lot, I don't remember the first time that I took a drink, but I clearly remember the first time I got drunk. The first time I got drunk, I was about 16 years old. It was on a Sunday night. It was a school night. What sticks out about that first drunk to me was the fact that I blacked out. Now, social drinkers don't have blackouts. Only alcoholics have blackouts. This is one thing that I know today about alcoholism. And I'm having a blackout the very first time that I get drunk. So that just tells me I was just an alcoholic just waiting to happen. But on that magical Sunday night, something did happen to me that changed my life. And I realized, I've always been the round peg trying to squeeze into a square hole. Like I just never seemed to fit. And I hear people at the podium say that all the time. I just felt like I just didn't belong, like I didn't fit. There was something different about me. And that's how I was. And so when I took that first drink and then the second drink, I realized that I do fit, and I am pretty, and I am smart, and I'm all these things, because I was socially awkward. I didn't have a lot of friends, and I preferred it that way. And then when I drank, I was everybody's best friend, and it just opened up a whole new world for me. Our big book at the bottom of page 33, I'm just going to paraphrase Bill Wilson because I try to quote him and I get it wrong, and in the thank you line, somebody invariably corrects me. And so to avoid that, I'm just going to say that I'm paraphrasing the big book. At the bottom of page 33, Bill Wilson wrote something like, potential female alcoholics often cross the line and become the real thing in a very short period of time. Now, how he knew to write that in the late 1930s when the membership numbered about 100 men. That's what the book says. It's about 100 men in the very first edition. And there's that sentence at the bottom of page 33. And when I look at that, I just think to myself, you can't tell me that this book is not divinely inspired. Because where else would he have got that information? Because it's true. Like, it was true for me. It's true for the women that I sponsor. Any woman that I know in Alcoholics Anonymous who is working a serious program, if you ask them, it's been my experience. So at age 16, I have my first drink. By age 18, by age 18, 2 years later, I am a full-blown alcoholic. And so I have my last drink at age 28, so I've got this 12-year drinking career. And I'm not going to take us through this big, long war story. Like, we all know how to drink. But I am going to qualify for my seat in here. In our literature, it says, I think it's in the preamble, it says there are no dues or fees for AA membership. And I don't know about you, but in my life, a very, very high price was paid so that I could have a seat in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I value my seat. And I know that if I ever decide I want to pick up another drink and go back out again, that the price that was paid for my seat was done in vain. And I just don't want that. I just can't have that on my hands. And so let's just cut to the chase. So I managed to graduate from high school. I don't know how I did that. I always did just enough to get by, just enough to keep that monkey off my back, just enough. And my grades were like C's, D's, and F's. And if they said, Terri, you're not going to get your high school diploma if you don't do this health course, or if you don't step it up. So I would step it up over there just enough because a counselor told me that I needed that health credit. And so I graduate from high school, and then the drinking really takes off. I'm drinking on Friday night. I'm drinking on Saturday night. Then I'm drinking on Wednesday to break up the middle of the week. And then I start drinking on Monday because it's Monday, and it's my drug of choice. I love alcohol. I love what it does to me because it gets me out of my own skin. I can't stand my own skin. I don't have any self-esteem. I've got none. And I'm getting what I think is self-esteem from other men in bars while I'm sitting on bar stools. And I was the great manipulator. I used to pride myself. I would walk into a bar. I'd have like $10 in my purse at, 7 or 8 o'clock at night. I would sit there till 2:30 and leave that bar with $8 in my purse. And I thought that was cool. I liked that, and I'm ashamed of that today. I mean, there's a lot of people I know owe amends to, and I was the kind of girl. Anybody ever open their eyes after a long night of drinking and you just don't recognize the wallpaper? That was me. Like if you bought me enough beer and we had enough fun, we're going to go home, we're going to have a little bit more fun. And that's what I did. And one thing that sticks out in my mind was a trip to South Bass Island. Out in Lake Erie, there's a little chain of islands, and one of them, Put-in Bay, is like the party island. Everybody goes there to party. And I went over there in I think it was 1989, I don't remember, but me and my girlfriend Lisa, it was in August, so it was hot. I'll just let you imagine what I was dressed like, because I had to have the women of Alcoholics Anonymous had to teach me how to dress like a lady, and how to clean up that potty mouth and conduct myself like a lady. But back in 1989, I didn't have any of those tools. I didn't have any of that information. And so I get on a ferry with my girlfriend Lisa. We go over to the island. It's Thursday night, and we start pounding beers down and drinks and shots and Jello shots and whatever else you do over at the island. And the last cognizant memory I have, Lisa and I step into the ladies' room, and we ripped off all of our clothes, and I put on her outfit, which wasn't much, and she put on my outfit, which wasn't much, and we went back out to the bar where these guys were just to see if they would realize that we had switched outfits, and nobody noticed. And I'm like, is that what you think of me, right? So that's on Thursday night. The next thing I know, I open my eyes, I look around the room, again, I don't recognize the wallpaper. Oh, crap, where am I at? Where's Lisa? Oh, I'm on South Pass Island. So I see the flight of steps. I go down this flight of steps, and there's this large, obese man sitting at a kitchen table smoking a cigar in the house at a kitchen table. And the old man looks over at me, and he says, well, there's my sunshine. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, please don't let me be his sunshine. I did not want to be that man's sunshine. And I hated to ask, but I needed to know, where exactly am I? He said, oh, honey, you don't remember? No, I don't remember. Thank God. He said, we're on Middle Bass Island. I'm like, really? Okay, now I'm thinking it's Friday. And he's like, yeah. And somehow it came out that it was Sunday morning. And I'm like, it's Sunday? I don't know where Friday and Saturday went, but okay, can you get me back to the mainland or to a ferry? And he had like this $150,000 cigarette boat, and then I understood why I ended up with him, because that's the kind of girl I was. And anyway, so the drinking's out of control, and I'm that tornado, and I'm wreaking havoc in everybody's life, and I'm unemployable. I can't keep a job. I have a couple of loose jobs here and there as a bartender, and I would keep them for 4, 5, 6 weeks, and I do the invariable no call, no show, because I have no sense of responsibility, and I don't really care about you, and I'm using men for money to pay my bills and to pay my way. And I'm going to fast forward the tape. April 3rd, 1993. It's a Friday night. I'm sitting on a bar stool with my sister Pam in Genoa, Ohio, a place where I had drank quite frequently. I'm 28 years old. I'm 12 years into it. And I started drinking at 5 o'clock. So by midnight, I'm pretty thoroughly intoxicated. I'm not in a blackout, but I'm pretty drunk. And my sister's drunk, and this guy I was dating, his name was Tony, and he staggered into the bar about midnight, and he wanted to move to another bar over at the PI in Elmore, and I said, sure. And so Pam and I hopped in my car, and he hopped in his old beat-up, he had a Camaro that had like holes in the floorboard and rust all over it. And so I was following him down State Route 163. I was about maybe 2 miles from the farmhouse where I had just spent the last 10 years of my life. And there's one curve on that road, one curve. And I entered into that curve. You don't even have to slow down for that curve. You just need to navigate it. You need to turn your wheels to the right and drive through this one curve. And I was arguing with my sister because that's what we did when we were drunk. And I looked away from the road, and I looked at her, and I shouted something at my sister. And in that moment, I was in the curve, and I didn't turn my wheels to the right. I just kept going straight on a forward path, and I struck an oncoming car, and I killed a 14-year-old boy that was in the back seat of that car. That's what I did. And the gig was up. And I don't want to sound like a woman who was unremorseful or didn't have a conscience. But I would say to you that I was as remorseful as I was emotionally capable of being at that time in my life, because I was emotionally retarded, if that makes any sense. And in the summer of 1993, I made several headlines. Every time I turned around, I was on the front page of the Toledo Blade for, I had an arraignment and then a pretrial and a this and a that. And I'd never been in that kind of trouble before. And I'd had 2 DUIs, but never anything quite like that. And so in the summer of 1993, I would continue to drink, right? After I did this, I'm still drinking. And my thought process behind that was, if you had my problems, you'd drink too. Not that I ever needed an excuse to drink, but the truth of the matter is, by the summer of 1993, I had lost all my friends. I didn't have anywhere to turn except to the bottle. I mean, I had nothing. I had nobody. I didn't even have a friend. I didn't even have a friend. And so on October the 22nd, 1993, Judge Paul Moon in Port Clinton, Ohio, sentenced me to 4 to 10 years. And in the state of Ohio, it has since changed, but at that time, he could have given me a 2 to 10, 3 to 10, 4 to 10, or 5 to 10. And I walked into that hearing expecting 5 to 10 because my victim was only 14. And at that hearing, the victim's family employed the resources and the assistance of Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. So they came down from Michigan and Pennsylvania and Indiana. And like I'm looking around this room right now, the courtroom had more people than this crammed in that room. And I'm sure the majority of those people did not know my victim's family. I know they didn't know me. And the only person I wanted at that hearing was my mom. And my mom sat next to me at the defendant's table while I got my sentence. And when that judge sentenced me, when he gave me 4 to 10 years, and he told me, I'm taking your driver's license for the rest of your life. You'll never drive again in the state of Ohio or any of the other 49 states for that matter. And I sentenced you to 4 to 10 years in prison. And what really sticks out in my head was my mom screaming next to me because it was so silent in there. And then there was her. And in that moment, I'm just really ashamed to report to you that I didn't have an ounce of compassion for her or for that boy's mom that was sitting over there because I was numb. I couldn't feel a thing. Like I just wanted it to be over. And I'd hurt so many people. And I don't know about you, but I always used to say, well, I'm not hurting anybody but myself, right? This is my life. Why don't you just get off my back? I'm not bothering you, right? And look what I did. And that thing was so big and so ugly that I couldn't wrap my brain around it. I couldn't get my brain around what I had done. So you know what I did? I just pushed it back. I would stuff that down. Don't think about that. If that popped in my head, if the images, because I wasn't in a blackout, like I remember all of it. If the images of what happened in the road that night would pop into my head, I'd push that back. Don't think about that. And I would think about something else because I didn't know what to do with it. And I was emotionally ill-equipped to handle that, much less make an amends. I don't even know if I knew what the word meant, seriously. And I go into that hearing hung over. Like I just cannot stop drinking. It's the only thing I've got. So they put handcuffs on me and they lead me next door to the county jail, and I sit in this little cell waiting for my ride down to Marysville. Marysville is in central Ohio near Columbus, and it's got the only big maximum security prison in the state of Ohio for women, and I'm waiting for my ride down there, and a week later the jailer calls out my name, and I go, and I get dropped off at this maximum security prison for women, a sea of 2,000 women. I can't even stand women, and I'm surrounded by women. And I love men, but guess what? They ain't loving me because I got a number right here, right? And all that flirting and all that little manipulating stuff I used to do, that's not happening anymore. I can't do that. I got nothing. In fact, the women, now that I find myself living with, are running a whole different game than anything I'd ever seen. I'm from Woodville. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to minimize, but like, I didn't steal. Well, I don't know. I guess if you think about it, sitting on a bar stool manipulating a man for drinks all night, I guess that's a form of thievery. I don't know. But anyway, so I'm in there and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not here to make friends. I am just going to keep to myself. I'm going to do my time and I'm going to get out of here. And I got out into population, and these quirky behavior patterns began to emerge out of me. I'm suffering with untreated alcoholism, right? I don't have the drink. I don't have the 12 steps. I'm kind of in purgatory. I'm just like in this place in the middle. I need help. I don't even know that help's available. I don't know. I've heard of AA, but that's the extent of it. Like, I'd heard of it, but I didn't know anything about it. And so these quirky behavior patterns are like my makeup and my hair become very important. I had to wear these khaki pants every day, and I would iron my pants. I had these little creases. I don't know. I guess I thought if I could just fix up the outside, right, I could fool you, and you would think I was okay on the inside. And I'm dying on the inside. I'm dying. And it didn't take long. They well, let me say one thing real quick. The other inmates nicknamed me Barbie. Now, I know that's hard to believe. I know. And I wasn't even offended by that. I thought, you guys are just jealous of me. Look at me. Why wouldn't you be, right? Don't they know who I am? Oh, there's my favorite line. And, and so it didn't take long. They moved me to Cleveland, Ohio, the Northeast Pre-Release Center, downtown Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland, Ohio's best-kept secret. It's seriously like 3 or 4 blocks from where the Cleveland Indians play baseball. I am not kidding you. It's right there by an on-ramp at a big freeway. So these cars stop. The women, the inmates, there's like 650 inmates at this minimum security joint, walk over by the fence because they know their boyfriend's coming at, 3 o'clock, and there goes the bag of weed, over the fence, and then they're sitting in the yard. I'm not kidding. Like, this is what it was like back in the mid-'90s. I hope they've cleaned it up. I don't know what it's like today, but you can't get sober there. And I think it would be a little more of a challenge. But so anyway, I got there and I thought, God, I could do this. This is so much better from what I just left. And so I had this pro hearing coming up in the state of Ohio. I had to serve like 2 years and 4 months with all my good days to, in the eyes of the state, I had served 4 years after 2 years and 4 months or 8 months, whatever it was. So I got this pro hearing coming up and I wasn't stupid. I thought to myself, I'm here for an alcohol-related crime. Maybe I should go to some AA meetings. Not because I'm remorseful or I think there's something wrong with me. Maybe I need some help. I got this pro hearing coming up, and I'm sure they take attendance there, and they're going to record that, and the Ohio Pro Board will see that, and then maybe they'll smile on me, and I'll get to go home. And so in the months leading up to my hearing in the winter of 1995, 1996, there were several other inmates there for vehicular homicide as well. And I was watching their cases very closely to see what they would do to them, to kind of get a gauge on what they were going to do to me. And around that time, the tide began to turn, and they started cracking down really hard on vehicular homicide. They don't take very kindly to what I did, especially if you had prior DUIs. And so the young lady that was from Cleveland, Ohio, her name was Denise, and Denise was there for vehicular homicide. The victim was her best friend, a passenger in the front seat of her car. Had been childhood best friends, always friends their whole life. And that girl's mom had sent a letter to the pro board encouraging them. We forgive her. And she got the minimum sentence. She had a 2 to 10. And so she did less than, I think, maybe a year and got to that first hearing. So I was outside in the winter, the Cleveland winter, waiting to get the results of her hearing, waiting for her to step out. And when she did, she was pretty hysterical. And I said, what just happened in there? She said, they gave me the whole 10 years. I said, they did what? She said, yeah, they gave me the whole 10 years day for day. In fact, I'm not eligible to be housed here. I have to go back to Marysville today. See, they had this rule. You had to be a minimum status and within 4 years of going home or seeing the Ohio Pro Board, one or the other, to be housed there. And she didn't fit that criteria because she just got 9 years in one fell swoop. And so that was pretty shocking. And then like 2 months later, it happened again with another inmate. And I don't want to get into all those details, but they gave her 10 years, and it prompted me to call home. I called my mom. I said, oh, my God, Mom, they're giving these vehicular homicides the whole 10 years. I'm getting a little concerned here because, you see, it's all about me. It always was all about me. I'm not trying to get better. I'm not trying to do something different. I'm trying to go home. And let me tell you something. I'm going to be really honest with you here. If I would have went home at that first pro hearing after doing 2 years and 4 months, you would have another speaker up here tonight. Or you'd have Doug. You'd have the guy you're supposed to have. We love Doug. You'd have Doug. And I'd be in Ohio. I'd probably be dead somewhere. God only knows. I wouldn't be standing here. That much I'm absolutely certain of. And so I get to my first pro hearing, and I'm not special. I'm not different. They gave me the whole 10 years in one fell swoop. I did not fit the criteria to be housed at that institution anymore. They dressed me out in an orange jumpsuit, put leg irons on my ankles, put handcuffs on my wrist. Quickly, pack your stuff. And very quickly, I couldn't make a phone call. It was a security risk. Stuffed me in the back of a white minivan and drove me down to Central Ohio and dropped me off. And there I was, locked in a box, just like you see on TV, with a sink and a bunk and a toilet, waiting to be assigned a bed out in population. And I couldn't even cry. I just surrendered almost 8 years of my life for my stupidity, and I couldn't even cry. It's kind of like that boy that whistles in the dark to keep his spirits up, That's who I was at that time. I was an untreated alcoholic. And I'm dying on the inside, and I don't even know it. Don't even know. because I'm too busy trying to curl my hair and put on my makeup and put on this facade to make you think I'm okay. And maybe I'm just a little bit better than you because I've got this inferiority complex. And to compensate for that, I act like I'm just a little bit better. And I'm really sick. And so I had the staff down in Marysville all fooled. Because of the way I carried myself and the way I dressed and kept myself up every day, they all thought, well, she's just this nice, sweet girl from the country. She's got a high school diploma. If you've got a high school diploma in the penitentiary in the state of Ohio, that thing is like gold. You will not sling a mop or flip a soy burger. They will find a real job for you. And they found a real job for me working in the count office. I worked for Lieutenant Wasmer. I had my own, it was a typewriter. I almost said computer. I had my own typewriter. I had my own little office space. I had an assistant that helped me. I had 3 inmate runners that sat on a bench, a church pew, in the hallway outside of my office. That was their job. They were not permitted to step forward and come into the office unless I whirled around and said, I need a runner. Now, if that doesn't feed your ego in the penitentiary, I don't know what will. And it wasn't my rule. It was like that when I got there. It was this position of authority, an inmate with authority over another inmate. Stupidest thing I ever heard of. But anyway, there they had it. They gave it to me. And so one day, what part of my job duties was, I was, inmates that were being dropped off from various counties around the state of Ohio, part of my job was to get them in on the roster and move them from the admissions out into population and do these bed moves and this documentation. And I had my own count running. How many inmates are in this building? How many are in this building? It was a very, very important job. And they got the right girl, I'm telling you. And so one day I typed up all these bed moves. It was about 3:30, and every day at 4 o'clock there's a count. They have like 6 counts every 24-hour period, but the 4 o'clock count is very important because it's a standing count. You have to literally be standing next to your bed. And that actually originated in Marysville because they counted a dead inmate for 48 hours. She was in her bed, and she had had a heart attack. And so once they realized that she was dead, and she began to, rigor mortis was set again, and that's how they realized that she was dead. And so they instituted a statewide rule, 4 o'clock, everyone shall stand next to your bed with your eyes open and make visual contact with the officer. So we got this standing count every day at 4 o'clock. So on this one particular day, I typed up all these bed moves. It's like 3:30. I got like 35 bed moves, and I can't find Lieutenant Wasmer. And so I run into the tie office to Miss Floyd, what's her name? And let me preface this. So Miss Floyd was the woman, she was the epitome of who I wanted to be. Every lock of hair was in place. She never wore the same dress twice. Her makeup was always perfect. She never, ever, one time did that woman treat me like an inmate. She always, always treated me with kindness and respect. And I held her in very high esteem. And so I ran into her office, and I had these 35 bed moves, and I'm kind of in a panic mode. I said, Miss Floyd, I've got these 35 moves, and these girls, if they don't start packing their bags and moving, that 4 o'clock count is never going to clear. Would you please sign off on these so I can get them run so that these inmates can start moving and get on the correct beds? And she said, oh, absolutely. Come in here. And I stepped into her air-conditioned office, and while she's signing away, she says, Terri, I've been meaning to talk to you anyway. She said, there's a really good program over at Recovery Services called Hearts, and I think you'd be a great candidate for that program. I said, Hearts? I said, well, what is it? She said, oh, it's just a recovery program. And I said, you know what, Miss Floyd, I'm going to tell you something. I'd already done 5 years. At this point, I was 5 years in. I can't earn a good day. And I told her, I said, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to do AA, the Victims Awareness, or any of the other parenting programs. I'm not doing any of that because I'm not earning credit. There's nothing in it for me. Right? I don't think I said it quite like that, but that was the intention. I'm doing my time, and I'm going home. And again, if it had hung like that, Doug would be here, I'd be in Ohio. And but she said the magic words, and what she said to me was, you know, Terri, there's a 2-year waiting list to get into that program, and I can pick up the phone and make a phone call, and I can get you moved to the front of a 2-year waiting list. I said, well, sign me up. Somebody has realized how important I am. I'm going to move to the top of a 2-year waiting list. I had no idea what I'd got myself into. I didn't even know I didn't care. and it was something different. I'd been at the county office for 2 or 3 years, and I was ready to do something different. So she made the phone call. I got put in the next group whenever it started, like 2 or 3 weeks later. And so what they had to do was reassign my job. So I have to show up at Recovery Services every day, Monday through Friday. I think it was like from 8 to 4, with a break in the middle for lunch and account time in the middle. And it didn't take me too long to figure out how terribly I'd screwed up. This was an intense behavior modification program, and I didn't know anything about it. And just to preface, give you an idea of how the program was set up, I'm going to tell this really brief story. The way the group was set up, there was like 14 inmates going through the program. Then the 15th inmate is employed by Recovery Services. She's already been through the program, and her function is to give feedback. She just works there. She sits in on every session. And then the 16th person is a woman. She's employed by the state of Ohio. She's a licensed alcohol and drug counselor in the state of Ohio. So we got this circle set up. One day we come back from lunch, and the gal that sat right across from me, the rumor I'd heard out in the yard was that she had killed her daughter. Now, in the state of Ohio, if you've harmed a child, it doesn't matter. If you've killed the child or just harmed it, doesn't matter. If the other inmates get wind of that, they will make your stay extremely difficult, because even inmates have standards, especially when it comes to the babies. And, and that's one of the reasons I never said why I was in prison. I think I forgot to tell you that so early on, this rumor had circulated that I was locked up for embezzlement because I was some high-ranking executive at this big bank in the state of Ohio, and I'd embezzled millions of dollars, and I loved that rumor. I loved it because it meant that I was college-educated, but being a girl that robbed a bank, to me, was a whole lot better than being a girl that had killed a 14-year-old boy. And I was really horrified that the other inmates, if they found out that I had killed a 14-year-old boy, might make my life hell. And so despite that it was an accident, I didn't know, and I just wasn't going to take a chance on that. And so we circle up around the table. The counselor says to this woman, "Why don't you tell the group what you did to your daughter?" And I remember sitting there thinking, oh, my God, she's not going to tell this story. And this woman told a story. And I'm not going to repeat the story here. I would just say to you, it was as bad as it could get. And when she got telling the story, the way the program was set up, you place your hands flat on the table and your feet flat on the floor during the feedback process. When you're done sharing, those hands are glued to the table. And during the feedback process, while the other 15 people in that circle are ripping you up, you don't speak, you don't talk, you don't blow your nose, there's no tissues. Like, those hands are glued to that table. And on that Wednesday afternoon, she probably talked for maybe an hour. And then the other inmates, that program went on that day all the way till 4 o'clock. They lit her up for almost 3 hours. And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, oh, my God, there's going to come a day when they ask you about what you did, and you're going to be in the hot seat. And that was on Wednesday. And then we came back from group on Friday. We circled up around the table. And we came back from lunch. And so it was like 1 o'clock Friday afternoon. And that counselor looked straight at me, and she said, "Okay, Terri, why don't you tell the ladies in this circle what the story about that night you wrecked your car?" Now, my first thought is, oh, great. It's going to get out to the yard that I didn't rob a bank. Because I'm always trying to say, I don't know about you, but I got to save face here, right? And then the next thought was, you knew this was coming, so buck up. Tell the story. So I sat up straight. I told a story. And what happened was, remember I told you how I'm a stuffer. Like, I never would process that information. I didn't even allow myself to think about it. It wasn't allowed to be in my consciousness. It had to be stuffed in the back in a dark room somewhere. And I'm being asked to pull it forward and to share it. And I got no program. I got no fourth and fifth step. I got nothing. And so I tell this story, and it's almost as if like this old, dusty, reel-to-reel videotape inside my head begins to roll, and I'm very disconnected emotionally from what's happening in those images. And so what's coming out of my mouth is just the visuals off this old reel-to-reel. There's no thought. There's no feeling. I'm not connected. And I tried to cry a little bit, try to act like, like I was remorseful. That's all. You can't fake that. I mean, you're either there or you're not there, and I was not there. I had never said anything from my heart. I had never even uttered a word from my heart at that point. And I was probably at that point 32 years old, maybe 33, and I had never even said, "I love you," from my heart. I don't know how to speak from my heart. And so I'm being asked to do something that I don't know how to do. And so I tell this bullcrap story, right? And but it was my recollection as best as I could remember it. And so I got done, and I put my hands flat on the table and my feet flat on the floor, and I proceeded to get my feedback. And my feedback on that Friday afternoon went something like this. Boy, if I didn't know any better, I'd think you were the victim. And if you have no remorse, like, I can't believe you, Terri. And the counselor is pounding her fist on the table. Do you want to save face or save ass? Because you can't save both. And I'm trying to save both because I got nothing. And so I'm staring at that clock. I just couldn't believe the way these women are talking to me. Don't they know who I am, right? And I'm dying on the inside. And every time somebody opened up their mouth, it was almost like they had like hammers and chisels and picks, and they just kept banging at this wall and banging at this wall and banging at this wall. And it just seemed to me like one moment in that afternoon, a beam of light made it through that wall that I had put up, and it nailed me right there. I had one brief moment of clarity where the thought was, oh my God, what have you done? Like, I saw it in its entirety, and then it collapsed, like it just shut back down. And 4 o'clock, the whistle blew. That meant everybody had to go and stand next to your bed. And I jumped up, and I grabbed my book, and I started to head for the door, and she said, not so fast. When you get back to your room, I want you to write that boy a letter. And I'm all crying and teary. I said, well, I don't know what to say, and it's going to all be wrong anyway. She's like, I'm not going to tell you what to say. Just write a letter to the boy. Bring that to group on Monday. Oh, and one more thing. When you get back to your cell, I want you to wash that makeup off. I don't want to see any more makeup on you, to stop curling your hair and ironing your uniform. For 2 weeks, I'm placing you on makeup restriction. And I said to her, whatever. I was so mad. I couldn't believe that she was trying to peel my mask away. Who does she think she is? And so I go back to my room. I got up on my bunk, and I grabbed a pen and a paper in the moment, like immediately, like right away, as soon as I got back to the room. And I wrote a letter to a 14-year-old boy, and it was 4 pages. It was front and back. And I'm not kidding you, man. It just rolled off the end of that pen. I couldn't keep up with the words fast enough that were coming out of my mind onto that paper. And I was writing things like, you're not going to get your high school diploma. You're not going to get your driver's license. You're not going to go to your senior prom. You're not going to marry a wife. You'll never procreate. I've taken all these things away from you and so much more. And those words were coming from a place that was kind of foreign to me. Like, I don't know where that came from. And it just seemed to me, that program that I was at that afternoon, it just created a space, just an opening. All that badgering and that beating up, it just created a little opening where I could go a little bit deeper. And I wrote this kid a letter. And one of my favorite lines in the big book is actually on page 30. Bill Wilson writes on page 30, and I am going to quote him. He said, we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were an alcoholic. That line is huge because it contains, for me, one really big key ingredient, our innermost self. And if I said to my sponsor, what does he mean? Where is that? How do I get to my innermost self? It's not here. I can't think my way through this thing because this is messed up. Like, my disease is up here and my ego is up here, and I just committees and chitter chatter, and it's just not a safe place to be alone. But my innermost self is another place. That's where we get the soul work done. And so if I could concede to my innermost self that I'm an alcoholic, then I could start getting some work done. And so my innermost self, that's the journey, that's the place, that's where I need to get. And I don't know how to do that. I ain't got a clue. All I know is what I'm doing ain't working, and I'm dying on the inside. And I found out that this thing's an inside job. This is an inside job. I don't get it by osmosis. 90 meetings in 90 days, that's great, but show me in our literature where it says that. Where does it say that? 90 meetings in 90 days killed a lot of alcoholics. That is not enough. You need to back that up. Back it up. This thing is an inside job. I don't get it by osmosis by just sitting here. I need to do the work. I need to get a sponsor. I need to dive into the steps. I need to open that book. I need to open that literature. I need to open my mind, open my heart. I need to be willing to do something different. Oh, wait, everything different. I need to be willing to do everything different. Because I can't live like that. And I don't know how to live. I don't know how to live normally. I don't naturally know how to do the next right thing. The next right thing doesn't come natural for me. You know what comes natural for me? Whatever's working for Terri. Whatever's my way. What I want. Screw you. That's the way I lived. And that's a lot of undoing. Like, I don't want to be that woman. That is not who I want to be. And so, God, I really got off course. Sorry. Monday morning, we get back to group. We circle up around the table. I look at the counselor. I said, well, I've got my letter. And she said, that's good. I said, well, I want to read it. Because, see, I'd made such a fool of myself on Friday. And I knew the letter came from my heart, and I was trying to clean things up a little bit. She said, you will read the letter, but before you read your letter, she goes, I want to revisit group on Friday. I want you to tell us that story about the night you wrecked your car, but this time, I want you to tell the truth. I thought, man, you could have knocked me over with a feather. I couldn't possibly go through that again. And then the next thought was, you know what, screw it. I'm never going to see these women again. So I told a story. And it was the same story, because the facts of what happened in the road that night will never change. What changed was my perception, because I don't see things the way that they really are. I see things the way that I am. And my perception had shifted over the course of the weekend. So the story that I told on Monday morning wasn't all about me and how horrible that was for me. It was about her. I saw Jane Miller. I saw his mom. I saw her at the bumper of her car and then turn and run toward Genoa, toward Toledo. She probably ran the length of a football field in the dark, in the cold. And when she stopped and bent over and grabbed her knees and she let out a scream. And I remember thinking to myself, someone that she loves is hurt really bad. And I did that. And so I told that story, and it wasn't about me. So when I got done telling the story, I put my hands on the table, and I was ready to get my feedback. And she said, well, wait, before we do the feedback, I'd like you to read the letter that you wrote Friday. And so I read this letter that I had wrote to this 14-year-old boy, and when I got done reading my letter, I looked up. You know, on Friday afternoon, when I got my feedback, they all had their claws out. And then on Monday morning, when I went to get my feedback, when I looked up, there was like 15 women. They were all looking at me with these compassionate eyes. They had this compassion, and it just seemed to me like it was a safe place in that moment to just go ahead and let that go, you know? That I don't have to be that woman. I don't have to be, I thought I'm just a killer, you know, I kill a kid. And it was so obscene and so horrible and so obnoxious that I could do such a thing that I turned my back on it because I didn't know what to do with it. And there it is in all of its ugliness, and I just puked it all over the table for everybody because I had been choking on my own crud. Like I just needed to get rid of it. And I did, and I got it out of me. And those women, because it came from here, and the vomit didn't come from up here, it came from here, that deep soul place where I think we all have that place deep down. It's a dark room where we got that stuff, you know, like I'm never, ever telling that. I am taking that to my grave. It's in that place that I was required to go and have that emotional vomit to purge from that place, from that kind of gut, that deep level. And that was my beginning. Like that changed my life. I didn't even know that at that point I'd pretty much done steps 1, 2, 3, 4. I was like at the 5th step. I had no idea because we weren't talking about steps. This was an intense behavior modification program that changed my life. And so I want to fast forward just a little bit here. So the lady that was the inmate who worked for Recovery Services, her name was Sheila. She sat in on that group. And her and I became very good friends. Sheila shot her husband. I'm just going to tell you that. I loved her to pieces. She was feisty, and she didn't take any crap from anybody. And I looked at her and thought, yeah, she'll shoot you in the kneecap, too. because she shot Ron, and he comes to visit her, so she's really got something going on. And she did like 10 years for shooting his knee out. And so I liked her. I liked Sheila a lot. But what I liked most about Sheila was she had this sparkle in her blue eyes. She had these big blue eyes, and they twinkled. And there was something really special about Sheila, and I wanted what Sheila had. And she was kind of like an unofficial sponsor. And we'd sit out in the yard one day, and we started talking about God. And she said, we're just going to have to introduce God into this whole thing. And because we had, we talked about step 1, we were looking at step 2. And I'm like, I don't think the whole God thing's for me. And she's like, I don't know why you say that. What makes you say that? And I'm like, well, what kind of a God would have let that boy die in the accident that night? She said, what? I said, yeah. She goes, you blame God for that? I said, oh, no, I don't blame him, but he's God. Why didn't I die? I should have died. Why do bad things happen to good people, right? That famous last question, why do bad things happen to good people? I should have died. She goes, instead of asking, why didn't God save that boy, why don't you ask, what kind of a 28-year-old girl would get behind the wheel of a car under the influence of alcohol and place in jeopardy the lives of everybody else on the road that night? I said, okay, I'll give you that. I said, what about those starving babies in Ethiopia? We've all seen their little arms about that big. What kind of a God would let that happen? And she said, I can't believe you're blaming that on God. She goes, I'm going to tell you something. There's no dearth of food on this planet. There's enough food that nobody should ever go to bed hungry. Don't ask what kind of God would let the babies in Ethiopia starve. You need to be asking what kind of people. And in that moment, I just had this epiphany, like I got it. Like I have always blamed God for everything in my life, everything that ever went wrong. He and I were not on very good speaking terms. And she was so eloquent. She just kind of asked me some real basic, fundamental questions. She said to me, where do you think God is? I said, I don't know. I suppose he's in heaven. Where do you think heaven is? I don't know. I never thought about it. I suppose it's up there, out there somewhere. Okay, what do you think that he's doing? I don't know. He's godding? I don't know. What does God do? God does like everything. He makes the earth go around the sun and turns, embryos into babies and acorns into oak trees. He's busy, and a bazillion prayer requests every nanosecond. And she asked me these fundamental questions, and what I came to realize is that if that's true, if God is up there, out there somewhere, if it's true, and that means that God and I are separate, because he's up there, out there, I'm down here, there's this space in between us. And what I found out, and if you don't hear anything else I said during the last hour, hear this, get this. God is not just up there, out there somewhere. God is here. This is where he is to be found. That's the message. That's what I want you to hear me say tonight, that God is inside us. I'm looking out there, and I'm blaming, and I'm looking for evidence. Don't you see that God's not real, or don't you see that he's punishing? See, because I thought that he was up there, out there, and he was keeping score. See, and he had a place for girls like me, right? And it was not pleasant, because that's what's crammed down my throat when I was little. Well, if you're bad, God's got a place for you, right? And so it pushed me away, because I came to believe that he was going to punish me. And when I found out that that was a bunch of hogwash, and that he's not up there, out there, that he's right here, and all he wants is a relationship with me, is to experience the world through my eyes, how I experienced that flight through Julie's eyes coming out here. That's what he wants, is to experience, to be a part of. Like today, I asked myself, what kind of conversations are going on inside my head? That is the state of my recovery. It really is. It's what state of mind am I in? I am 24 years sober. What do I think about all day long? What are those? I heard on a talk not long ago on a tape. It wasn't a recovery tape, but he said, on average, he was a doctor, we have 60,000 thoughts a day go through our head. 60,000, which is not a problem. The problem is, it's the same 60,000 thoughts every day, just twisted. And I'm like, oh my God. So I asked myself, what do I think about all day? And so that stuff becomes real important, because it's a state of mind. And so anyway, she asked me to start praying, to ask God to direct my thoughts, my words, and my deeds. Just do that. Just do that. I said, well, I could do that. And so I started saying that simple prayer every day. And she asked me to say it for 30 days, and I said it for 30 days. And things started to change. And I realized, because she drilled into my head, don't pray up there, out there. Turn your attention to your heart. God's in your heart. You pray to your heart. That's where you'll find God. In the last analysis, that's where he is to be found, right? In the last place I would look, in my own backyard. And if the grass is greener on the other side, right, maybe I need to start fertilizing. This is an inside job. I got to take care of me. And so I started to develop this relationship with God, and my life started to get better. My outlook started to change, and things started to shift in my life. And I took a job at Recovery Services after I finished that program, and I started going to 2 meetings a day. I was doing one in the mornings because it was part of my job to set it up and to put the books out and chair the meeting. Then I was going in the evenings because they had outside speakers coming in. And about 8 years into my incarceration, I ended up back at the Northeast Pre-Release Center with just 2 years left on my sentence. And I went over to the Recovery Services Department. I walked into Miss Daniels. I loved Miss Daniels, this large, robust black woman who was trying to service 650 inmates out of a tiny little office the size of my bathroom. And I walked in there all excited. You know, I'm on this new recovery path. Miss Daniels, what kind of books do you have? Do you have any cassette tapes? And she wasn't in recovery, and she walked over to the shelf, and she took down this box about this big, and it had 10 cassettes in it. And she goes, there's this big book study, this Joe and Charlie thing. I don't know, maybe you'll find this helpful. And I go, oh, okay. And, and I'd been reading the big book and going to limited meetings. And so I took that back to my cell. And at 4 o'clock, I put on the headset and I put in cassette. I'm dating myself here. It wasn't a CD. It was a cassette. And I stuck it in my little Walkman and I pressed play. And oh, my God, it took me like 2 minutes to figure out, I got a pot of gold here, man. This stuff is good. And I had a big book that I had got from Marysville, and I started highlighting, and I started going through the first 164 pages, and I got real excited because I was hearing things from those guys that I'd never heard before, and I was getting amped up, about this whole recovery thing, and I thought, I'm going to go through it again, but this time I'm going to do the steps, and I'm going to let them guide me through the steps. So I went through it a second time, and, the first time I used yellow, and then the second time I used a pink highlighter, and I went through the steps under the direction and guidance of Joe and Charlie, and then I was like, God, I would miss not doing this at the 4 o'clock count. I did it every day at 4 o'clock for 45 minutes while we were, during that downtime for count. And so then I did it a third time, and then I did it again and again and again, and it became part of my daily routine. And then for 2 years, for the remainder of my stay, every single day at 4 o'clock, it was me and Joe and Charlie. And if you asked me, who was your first sponsor, I would say it was Joe and Charlie, because Joe and Charlie took me through the steps. And a couple of years ago, thank you. Thank you. A couple of years ago, this was after Joe had died, so at this point they were both deceased. This is a great story. I'm just a girl from Woodville, Ohio that made a horrible, horrible mistake. And my life just keeps getting better and better and better. And I was asked to come down to Little Rock, Arkansas and speak. And I had been flown down for this conference, and on Saturday morning, my hostess rang me up. She said, Terri, are you up? I said, yeah, I am. And she goes, throw your shoes on. I got a treat for you. I'll meet you in the lobby in 10 minutes. I'm like, okay. I get all excited, and I go down there, and she goes, get in the car. So I get in the car, and she drives me to a place called Serenity Path. And Serenity Path was a treatment center that was founded by Joe McHugh of the Joe and Charlie tapes that I had been listening to. And he had just died maybe 6 months before that. And his office was actually, his desk in particular, everything was in the exact same state that it was the last time he was in it. And I got a private tour with another speaker. And I just reflect back on that, and I just thought, how does a felon, an old whore like me, end up in a place like this with people who truly care about me? And because Joe and Charlie changed my life. I've not been the same since I spent 2 years with them doing those tapes. And if you ever get a chance, if you've not listened to them, man, I highly recommend that, especially if you're new. So that book, that big book, actually, it's falling apart. I still have it today. All the writing and the notes and the highlighting, it looks like a rainbow. It looks like a big book is supposed to look, and it's falling apart. And I very seldom use it because it's real special to me. And so, going to fast forward. So my special day came October the 19th, 2003. It was on a Sunday morning. I'd served every single day of 10 years. It was 8 o'clock in the morning, and my mom was out in the parking lot, and I had in my arms my TV, an envelope filled of pictures, and I had that raggedy old beat-up big book that I had, used every day, And that buzzer buzzed, and I remember seeing her on the other side, and as I approached that gate, I just remember thinking to myself, oh my God, kid, this is where the rubber's going to meet the road. Did you mean what you said? Did I get enough work done? Is there something left undone that I need to be doing? And I knew the answer was yes. I need to get to an AA meeting, and it's urgent. I've got to go today. It can't wait. And I had enough insight because Joe and Charlie, I understood on Friday before Miss Daniels left, I had to take the tapes back because she was only there Monday through Friday, and I turned those in on Friday. I said, you're going to have to help me get a phone number of someplace in Toledo. I didn't even know of a central office. I didn't know of a GSR. I didn't know none of that stuff. I'd never even heard of it. I just knew there's got to be a place that I can call, and maybe somebody could come to Woodville and get me. I didn't know. And so she gave me the number for my local central office in Toledo, and when I got home, I called them, and someone came, and I went to an AA meeting, and that night I said, I just got out of prison today. I served every single day of 10 years. Oh, jaws drop. I just served every single day of 10 years, and I don't want to drink. I don't have a driver's license. I don't know where the meetings are. I don't even know anybody in AA. All I know is I don't want to drink, and I'm serious. And they were like, whoosh, newcomer, and she's serious. And they just swooped me up. And those women, after that meeting, there was like 12 of them, and they had surrounded me, and they were like, I'm going to get her tomorrow night. You get her on Tuesday, take her to Gibsonburg. You get her on Wednesday. I'll get her on Thursday. They planned out my week, and I didn't have anything else to do, and I was all about it. And those women, I look back on that with fondness. Those women really set the path for me. They helped me when I couldn't get to meetings. I didn't know anybody, and so that was my beginning. But I want to share a quick funny story, because Doug is really, really funny, and I'm not so funny, but I feel like you guys missed out. You got to come back tomorrow. So we're driving home from the penitentiary. I always try to make it sound nice. Like it was my room. It wasn't a cell. No, it was a cell. I always try to sugarcoat it just a little bit. So I'm coming home from the penitentiary. I hadn't been in public in 10 years. We're driving west down the Ohio Turnpike from Cleveland in the direction of Toledo, Ohio. And it's like a 2-hour drive. We get about an hour into it. I'm like, Mom, I got to pee. She's like, all right. So we pull into one of those rest stops. There's a McDonald's. And I'm like, oh, let's get a coffee. Okay, so we're standing in the line to get coffee. We walk in, and I just feel like I got this tattoo right here that says felon. I just kind of feel like, no, of course nobody knows. But my mom knows, and I know that I just got out of prison. So we're standing in this line, and my mom takes out some money, and she's standing there she had some dollar bills in her hand, and I looked down, and I saw that money, and I said, my God, what happened to the money? She goes, what do you mean? And I look up, and the people in the line got quiet and turned and looked back. The cashier's looking at me, and my tattoo's flashing red. And so I whispered to her, I said, it's got these great big giant heads on it. I couldn't tell a 5 from a 10 from a 20. They had redesigned the U.S. dollar, and I didn't see that on the news. I missed that. And so I thought, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. So we get our coffee, we go into the restroom, and we're going potty, and my mom beats me out, and she's standing at the sink waiting for me, and I come out of the stall, and I approach the sink, and I want to wash my hands, and I look down. How do you turn the water on? And she said, oh, just stick your hand under the faucet. I said, what? So I stuck my hand underneath that faucet, and the water poured onto my hands. I said, oh, my God. Like, it's like Psycho. Unbelievable. I couldn't wait to get back in the car. I was like, the whole world was just different. So anyway, I took a job. I get home. I take a job at the local grocery store scanning groceries. And, I got a high school diploma. Woodville's a small community. Everybody knew what I did. Everybody knew where I was at. But everybody didn't know I was coming home. And there I was at that grocery store to scan their gallon of milk and take their money. And I did raise eyebrows. And you know what? I would raise an eyebrow at a girl like me if I walked in the grocery store and there she was all of a sudden after a decade. Look at you. You got your nerve, but guess what? I'm not sitting on the bar stool at JoJo's. I'm going to AA meetings. I'm getting a sponsor. I'm working with other women. And it's a small community. You can't fart in Woodville, and everybody knows that you farted. And so everybody knows what I'm doing. And it took like 4 months for me to establish myself as a person who had, in fact, changed. I never once said to anybody, I've changed. Give me another chance. I never had to say that because I knew that my actions, my conduct said that I had changed, not that I said it. And so one day, an old friend of mine, her name was Lou, she came in the grocery store and she said, Terri, the eye doctor across the street's going to hire somebody. I go, an eye doctor? I go, I don't know anything about eyes. And she goes, oh, you don't need to. You just need to, can you answer a phone and file files? I'm like, well, yeah, I can do that. And she goes, that's all they need. The doctor's brother, the optician is the person after your eye exam who assists you, like picking out a frame, and they measure for your bifocal, if you need, whatever you need, or your contacts. So the optician was the doctor's older brother, and the optician had polio and drugged one of his legs, and he was like 67 with health issues, and he needed help. So I made the mistake of mentioning that to my sponsor, and then like 2 or 3 weeks later, my sponsor said to me, so what happened when you went over there and applied for that job? I said, oh, I'm not going to waste their time. Why would I, what doctor in his right mind would even consider hiring an ex-felon that did the kind of time that I did? And she said, well, you know what, when I pick you up Friday for that anniversary meeting we're going to, you're going to tell me how your interview went. So you've got all week to get up there. And that was like on a Monday. So then Wednesday when I got off work, I walked across the street. I went in that office, and the doctor, the only person that was in there was the optician, the older man with the polio. And when I walked in, he jumped up out of the desk, and I stuck my hand out. I said, my name is Terri. I understand you're going to hire somebody. I'd like to apply for that position. But before we talk about that, there's something that I've got to tell you. That old man jumped up out of that chair. He said, oh, for Pete's sakes, it's a small town. I already know about that. I've been waiting on you for a month. Where have you been? And I'm like, oh, across the street scanning groceries. He scared the crap out of me. And so what happened was the doctor and his brother had been talking to patients, the regulars, residents of Woodville, this small town. We're going to hire someone to help Bill. Who would you recommend? Who would you recommend? And my name kept coming up. Not only did my name keep coming up, but they told the doctor and his brother the story, and the doctor and his brother had got the feel from the community that this would be a good plan. And so they were waiting to interview me, and I'm across the street letting fear hold me back. You see how fear is such a big liar? I mean, and the Holy Spirit had already gone before me, made the crooked way straight, and I got fear holding me back. And so there's a big moral of that story. And so I got the job. So now I'm scanning groceries 2 or 3 days a week. I'm working for the eye doctor 2 or 3 days a week. And then about 2 years into it, Bill, the optician, developed cancer right here, and suddenly, out of nowhere, got sick and died. And after Bill died, after his funeral, Dr. Laub, my employer at that time, said, Terri, I need you to be licensed by the state of Ohio. When I'm not in the building, you can't be dispensing glasses and placing orders. So here's what you're going to study, and you're going to go down to Columbus in May, and you're going to take a test, and I'm going to pay. And I'm like, oh, my God. And your prescription's numbers. I am not good at math, and I got good at math. And so I studied every single day for 6 months, and I went down to Columbus, Ohio in May of 2006, and I sat and took that test, and I passed it. I'm a licensed optician in the state of Ohio. Who saw that coming? And thank you. And then one day when I was at the grocery store, an old friend from high school came in, and he was an old friend of mine. His mom was my English teacher, and he had this big, big belly and lost all of his hair, and I looked at him, I said, Eric? And he goes, Terri. And I'm like, oh, my God. I'm like, it's so nice to see you again. And he knew my story. He's like, you know what, I want to take you out to dinner Saturday. Hell, I hadn't been on a date at least a decade for sure, okay? And Mimi don't roll like that. And so anyway, I went on a date with Eric, and that was like, I don't know, this was a while after I got home, because my priority was not to go out and be on a date. My priority was to find out where are the meetings, who can be my sponsor, how am I going to get to AA, because I don't drive. That was my priority, and that's what I focused my attention on, and that's what I did. And once I got that settled, and that took a while, that was like a 6-month ordeal, then I thought, okay, now I can date. And so then I went on a date with Eric that I had known my whole life. If you said to me, where'd you meet him? I don't know, probably the swimming pool when we were kids. I've just always known him. And he's a great guy, and so we went on this date, and then we went on another and another and another, and then we ended up getting married, and I moved in with him, and I've got this really cool life, and I'm a licensed optician, and I live in a nice house, and things are really good. And One day, I'm not a jailhouse lawyer, but I was looking at the Ohio Revised Codes thinking, I'm such a burden on Eric and anybody else who loves me, and the women that I sponsor, drive me here, drive me there. And so I'm Googling lifetime license suspension in the state of Ohio, and this thing pops up. This is in 2010. This thing popped up that went on the books in 2004, like a couple months after I came home, like January 1st of 2004, it went into effect. And it said something like, if the offender has a lifetime suspension, if 15 years have passed, and if during those 15 years they haven't got any moving violations or DUIs or anything like that, and if during those 15 years they've had treatment, if it was drug or alcohol related, why their license was, and blah, there's all these things that I'm reading it going, I got that, I got that, I got that, I got that. I'm like, oh my God, I qualify for this thing, and this has been here for 6 years. And so I printed it and I took it home and I showed my husband. He's like, oh my God. He goes, we need to hire an attorney. I'm like, okay. And so I hired this attorney, a member of the program. And we scheduled this hearing, and next thing I know, here's the Toledo Blade and Channel 13 and Channel 11 and blah, 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 and they're all submitting these requests to record and videotape, and the judge is granting it, and then we show up at this hearing, and they're in the jury box. It's full of media. And my attorney had told me, Terri, I need you to fill the courtroom. Fill that courtroom. I'm like, okay. So every meeting I go to, after the meeting, I'm asking my recovery community in Northwest Ohio, would you come and support me at my hearing? Could you come to my hearing? And then I was telling people how to get there and where it was at and what time it was. And so when I get to the hearing, like, in 1993, it looked like this, and it was Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, and everybody wanted me dead. And in May of 2010, it looked just like this, and everybody was leaning in, hoping that I could get my driver's license back because you guys loved me. And it was just such a switch. And I just felt like I had been redeemed in some small way. I don't know why I'm so emotional tonight. Probably because I'm getting ready to go back to court over that stupid thing. But so the boy's mom was there, and she got on the witness stand, and she said under oath, she said, I am sure that this woman still drinks and drugs. You cannot put public safety at risk. You cannot restore her driving privileges. And the old Terri would have been sitting at the defendant's table screaming on the inside, no, I've changed. You can't say that about me. But I wasn't thinking that at all. While she was saying those things, I was sitting there thinking to myself, she's in so much pain. She still is in an enormous amount of pain. I've killed her only son, and it's not for me to say if she should ever forgive me or how long her grieving process should last. She can say anything about me that is pleasing to her, and in that moment, that was pleasing to her, and that's what she wanted to say, and she's allowed to say that. And so after the hearing, the judge didn't issue a ruling. He said he would do it electronically in 14 days, and so 14 days later on Channel 11, the noon newscast on my lunch break, my phone starts blowing up. You're on TV, you're on TV, you're on I'm like, oh God, I'm on TV. And he didn't get my license back. What he gave me was, you're going to wear an ankle monitor for 3 months to test for alcohol. And then after that, you're going to flip 2 drop-in urines no less than once every 10 days for 3 years. I said, okay. Like, I'm 17 years sober. Here's my leg. Where do you want to put it? Like, I have nothing to hide. And so I did that, and then I went back to court in 2013, and that judge gave me back my driver's license. He gave me a limited work permit and AA and the airport, which was huge because it's like an hour and 10 minutes from my house to Detroit Metro Airport. And he gave me... he keeps giving me little things, but one of the things the boy's mom said was, that 15-year requirement, I don't think those 10 years in prison should count. I think the clock should start ticking the day she walked out of prison, and if she would just wait and let those 15 years expire, I will not contest this. And that day is coming on April 3rd, and so we're getting ready to go back for full privileges because the 15 years is almost expired. So I think, and I'm scared, and I'm just trusting the universe, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I'm just grateful to have what I have today. And I got a little story I want to leave you with. In 2013, when I did get those limited privileges back, now I'm going to lots of meetings up in Toledo, meetings far away because I can drive, and I got this Chrysler 300, and I'm behind the wheel, and I'm legal because I'm going to AA, and I'm hearing people say, I kept hearing this repeated theme. I had an opportunity to go to my mama's funeral and put my 6-month coin in the coffin with her. Or I had an opportunity when I was down in Florida to go to my daddy's grave and make an amends at my dad's grave. And it just, that theme, just all of the month of September in 2013, every meeting I went to, and it didn't go unnoticed by me. And I remember saying a prayer, I'm like, God, are you trying to tell me something? Nope, didn't hear anything because I didn't want to hear anything because I'm a coward, right? And so by the end of September, early October, I'm on Facebook, and I get this private message from this guy down in Tennessee named Vance. And Vance, with the limited information that I provide about myself and my talk, that kid listened to one of my CDs, tracked me down on Facebook, and sent me a private message, this 26-year-old kid. And in the message, he attached a link to his sentencing hearing. He did what I did. And all he wanted to do was say, thank you for your talk. That meant a lot to me, and I understood that. And we became friends on Facebook, and we kind of stayed in touch. And like a week later, that kid sent me a private message, and he said, oh, I forgot to tell you. I got sentenced to the 3 years in prison, but the other thing, the man's wife, he killed like a 56-year-old man, and the man's wife at the sentencing asked the judge, would you please order this offender to go to my husband's grave on the anniversary of my husband's death once a year, every year for 15 years? And the judge ordered it, which I thought was brilliant. And so this kid is sending me a private message asking me, I got to go do this tomorrow because tomorrow's the anniversary. Is there anything you'd suggest? Yeah. So like smoke is coming off my fingertips. I'm telling this kid all these things that he should do, like that I would do if I had enough courage to do what the universe asked this kid to step up to the plate and do. But I'm a coward and I don't have the courage to do it. And I'm telling him, didn't take your 3-year coin and tell him that he didn't die in vain and blah, blah, blah. And I'm telling this kid all these things. Oh, and by the way, I'm out of town this weekend, but here's my cell phone number. If you call me tomorrow between 4 and 6 o'clock, I'm going to make myself available and we can process this, right? He thinks I'm going to help him. He has no idea what he's about to do for me. And on the next day, like clockwork, at 4 o'clock, that kid called me. And I'm hanging on his every word. What did that feel like? What were you going through? What were your thought processes? How long were you there? Were you scared? Did you experience fear? Do you feel relieved? How are you today? He thinks I'm helping him. I'm trying to figure out what God's got in store for me, right? So that was around October the 10th. On October the 17th, I get my 17-year coin. And the thought occurred to me, maybe I should take this coin to that boy's grave and make an amends. Then the next thought was, oh, no. I don't have coins 1 through 9. My first coin is the 10-year coin after I got out that those women gave me. And so I have all my coins in this little heart-shaped glass dish in my AA room at home. So we're not going to be doing that. I'm going to put the 17-year-old coin with the rest of them. And then within 48 hours, I had 3 17-year coins it was 20-year coins. I'm sorry, it was 20-year coins because everybody wanted me to have their 20-year coin. It was like, Terri, it would mean a lot to me if you'd have my coin. Like, gee, thanks. So I've got 3 20-year coins. So I put 1 in the glass dish. I put 1 at my home group in case anybody needed it. And then I stuck that third one in my glove box in my car just in case. You never know. And so then the following week, the end of October, I'm in training, and I have to do so many hours each year to keep my optician license current. So I'm in a training session with other opticians, and I'm thinking about how close I am to the cemetery where he's buried. I'm thinking about all the strange coincidences that led up to that. I'm not paying any attention to the instructor, and he's giving us a seminar on the transition lenses, the ones that lighten and darken when you step out in sunshine. I am not hearing any of that. And so they give the smokers a smoke break, and so I go down to the restroom, and I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe I could swing by the cemetery. It's kind of on the way home from here. It's not that far. And then the next thought was, you know what? I'd need at least $15 to go to that cemetery, and I'm sure I don't have any cash in my purse. Now, why? I have no idea where that thought came from because there's no admission fee at a cemetery, but there it was. And it gets better. So we go back after our break. We sit down at our tables, and there's like 30 opticians in the room, and the instructor wants to see who was paying attention. So he has this PowerPoint thing up, and there's the 5 transition lenses that are available on the U.S. market are on this board. He says, take a piece of paper, number it 1 through 5, and identify these lenses. I'm the one optician that wasn't paying any attention, and so I took my best shot. One of them was obvious. The other 4, okay, I just took my best shot. 30 opticians in that room, only one optician got all 5 right. That one was me, and for getting all 5 right, he walked over to the table where I was sitting, and he laid on the table right in front of me 3 $5 bills. I'm not making that up. I swear to God. And I remember looking up at the ceiling, and there was one of those humongous chandeliers, like just north of me, like it could have killed me. And I remember thinking to myself, God, please don't drop that light on me. I swear I'm going to go there as soon as I leave here. Like, I get it. Like, you don't have to say it any louder than you've said it this time. And so when I finished training, I took that $15 and I ran next door to Walmart, and I went inside and I bought a white silk floral arrangement to put on his stone, and I drove to that cemetery. And I got there, and I had those flowers, and I had an extra 20-year coin in my glove box that I had put there, and I made an amends to a 14-year-old boy 20 years later. And I set that coin on that stone, and I told him how sorry I was, and I told him that his death wasn't in vain, because I've been telling everybody his story. And I got there around 5 o'clock at night, and I'm sure I stayed for at least an hour. It started to get dark out. It was bordering on creepy. I had laid on top of his grave, and I was crying and just having this emotional purge. And it was a very spiritual experience for me. And I left there renewed, lighter, happier, and it did change my life. And so I just want to say, I don't know how to make an amends. How do you, if I was to break a window while I'm drunk and my sponsor said, okay, now that you're sober, you go over there and you tell Mr. Jones that you're sorry you broke his window. Okay. So I go to Mr. Jones and I tell him I'm sorry I broke his window. But my sponsor told me, in addition to apologizing for what I've done wrong, I need to replace the window that I broke and stop throwing rocks. That's an amends. And in this situation, I can apologize all day long, but I can't restore him to life. I can't do that. And my sponsor told me that I would make my amends through right living by consistently doing the next right thing, by setting up the chairs and the tables and putting on the coffee. And every Wednesday at Gibsonburg, I clean the coffee pot and I greet people. And that my sponsor said that I would make an amends through right living. And so every time I step up to a microphone and I share my experience, strength, and hope, I move just a little bit closer to my amends. Thank you very much. Thank you.